Hi there, welcome to the Carpe Diem conversation show where we have real people sharing their real life stories about getting more out of life by integrating work and life as one. I'm Andy Willis, your host. Welcome to the show. And thank you to all the people that are joining us once again, that join us every week. It's awesome to have you. And for all the new people that are joining us, which there's a few there, welcome to the show. Before we start the show, I thought I'd share a little bit about why I'm bringing this conversation to you. Why the Carpe Diem conversation show, and why we talk with other business owners just like you, sharing their stories about integrating work and life as one. I hope to be able to show you that there is an alternative to the traditional way you live life as a business owner, and that it's absolutely possible for you to start doing the things that you're dreaming of doing when you retire, or doing the things that you're dreaming of doing later. It's absolutely possible to start doing them right now. So that's why I bring this conversation to you. And we're about to, before we talk to our guest, before we bring our guest on, well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm mucking this up, but our guest tonight is Scotty Schindler. Scotty is from Sawtell. He's the founder of software startup company ReNet. Scotty grew ReNet over 18 years to become an international brand and a company that managed over $1.125 trillion in real estate across Australia and New Zealand. Now, Scotty's going to share with us how he was able to grow that company and also spend time living or traveling around Australia in a caravan. So without further ado, let's bring Scotty on. Hey, Scotty.
How you going?
Good. I mucked up that intro, but pretty good. That's okay.
That'll work.
How's things up in Sawtell?
Look, we've had a really good winter. It's been, I guess, good in the sense it's been dry. We've had bluebird days so much, but this last couple of weeks we've had a bit of rain, so the grass is needing mowing again, and the bindies are all coming out. But other than that, it's been an awesome winter.
Fantastic. Well, you can send some rain down our way because we've had nothing, absolutely nothing.
It's dry.
Anyway, yeah, no, anyway, it can only get better. And spring, you never know. We live in hope.
It'll come.
Tell us a bit about Scotty Schindler and a bit about where you are now, basically. Before we go backwards and talk about your story, what are you up to now?
Right now, look, I guess when I started moving into 2018 and I was financially dependent, I guess retired, and I started getting a bit bored. There's only so many times you can mow the lawn and only so many times you can wash the car. And I thought I'll start doing some things and playing around with some business ideas. And I started up a little hub up here in Sawtell to get like-minded people together. I guess I look back at some of the things I was missing as a business owner, and I thought, well, I'm enjoying sharing the story. I'm enjoying mentoring and educating others. And I thought, well, I'm going to build a little space so we can all get together and do that. And I've done that in the last few months. It's called the Success Hub. And that has created a little playground for business owners here on the north coast of New South Wales. And I didn't expect the uptake and the engagement. I thought it was more a playground for me. It turns out people really want to be a part of something bigger. So I'm pretty happy with where it's at.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. And so you're more or less hoping, or you are, it sounds like, providing something that you would have liked back when you were starting off quite a few years ago. Yeah,
absolutely. I went to a couple of business chamber meetings. They were great. They just weren't for me. I know there's some other networking things, and anyway, I didn't even know about half of these. I've now learned more about some of them that are around the place. But anyway, I just had an idea and a vision of what I thought would have been good, and I thought, well, I've got the money. I'm just going to set one up and suck and see. And it turned out to be a pretty good setup. So if you're ever up this way, by all means, call in and have a look.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely coming up that way very soon. But okay, but before you got to where you are now, what about where you started off so many years ago? Tell us a little bit about, where you needed help back then, and what your story is.
Well, I'll give you the 1 minute. So I did 10 years selling insurance, and so my background as a trade is in selling. So I learned the art of door-to-door selling, like literally knocking on business doors, door-to-door selling insurance. And then I started teaching and training and running sales teams. And I wanted to have a go on my own, and I wanted to start an IT company. And I didn't have any IT experience, but I thought, hey, I can have a crack. Anyway, so I went on the journey of starting out as a raw startup. Wasn't called a startup back in 2000. The term hadn't been established yet, but looking back now, they call it a startup. And I ended up developing 6 different goes at a startup. And the one that took off for me was ReNet, the real estate software product. It took 2 years. And then I went on the entrepreneurial journey over the following, I guess you call it, depending on whether you look at it, 13 or 15 years, through the whole growth phase, running the company, going through all the pains that you go through as a small to medium enterprise with staff, with managing the income you're making and trying to make it all worthwhile and balance out a young family. And I managed to do all that. I came out the other end with a succession plan, financially independent, retired early. And that's sort of the small snippet of that story.
Okay, you make it sound so simple, but I'm sure it wasn't. What were your main challenges back there especially when you were you spoke about 6 different goes at it and one that took off, but through all that there was, what were your challenges back there with especially balancing your life and your family?
Well, I didn't sleep a lot. That was one way I balanced it. So while the family was sleeping, I was going the extra mile. Now, I'm not saying I recommend that, but that's one thing I did. But I also, I guess, to add extra commentary to that, I was self-taught. So I didn't have a computer programming degree where I came along and used that knowledge to build a company. So I had to continually go and learn more and more. So a lot of my research development playground with product was done at nighttime in the quietness of nighttime. And my brain just kept on going. So I do suffer ADHD, so it wasn't a problem for me that I could sit up at nighttime and you get another hour of sleep as the sun came up and then be up like normal with everyone else. And but yeah, that was one of the things. The other thing that I struggled a lot with was like-minded people. So I struggled a lot with, around a barbecue, talking to people that were friends because, they were running their business, or they had jobs, they were employees, and they weren't in the same mindset, which was trying to grow a company to really create, I guess, something bigger all the time. I had big goals, big visions, big dreams, and I felt very alone a lot. So that was one of the struggles I had. Even my wife to this day still doesn't really understand the company, and she was a part of it. She did all the bookwork and everything. But, when she talks about the company, sometimes I think, oh, you sort of missed it a bit, but that's okay. So I was very much so on my own, constantly trying to drive the business. So that loneliness was one of the hardest things I had to deal with the whole time, with the company and trying to talk to other people about it.
So you spent a lot of time in the middle of the night running your company, and throughout the day. How did that affect? Obviously, you're not at your best for your family and for the other things that you like to do as well. And it's something that we often, as business owners, fall into. The business becomes us, and we do put off those. We defer those things the other things we like doing. Like we tell ourselves that we love our business and we love, that's what we love doing. But there are really other things that we like to do too, to travel and do other, personal things. How did you manage that? How did that work for you when you were that far into spending those long hours?
Yeah, look, I guess what was unique for me was I wanted to work 80 hours a week, so I didn't have to work 40. I was well and truly prepared, but I was also well and truly prepared. I set a lot of goals to balance life out for myself. And sometimes it offends some people, but I had a saying called school teacher hours. So I didn't mind breaking things into terms. So working really hard and then taking time off. So, the school teacher hours in Australia are 4 10-week terms. So I can work really super hard for a term, then go away with the family and do something. So they all knew what I was doing it for. So, we're going to Hawaii, or we're going to the snow, or we're going to Byron Bay camping, or we're going to go around Australia for 6 months in the caravan. We always had something to work towards as a family. It wasn't perfect. I'm sure in hindsight, there might have been some things I could have done differently. But at the end of the day, I broke things into terms. Working hard was okay, but I had to make sure that it balanced at the end of the day. And I got something back to the family and to us as a unit, so that way, I could stay married and have time with my kids and have all those sort of values, which is the reason why I started the company. The reason why I was working good hours and growing what I was growing was to be able to provide, and that balance was really important. Some people saw it as out of balance, but I saw it as perfectly in balance. But the way I captured it and phrased it was school teacher hours. I'm happy to use in terms, and those terms could be 6 months or 3 months or 10 weeks like school teachers, but it was just an analogy to do things in terms, set goals, achieve what you need to achieve, and then obviously balance it out with some time. And then I was able to, when I was away, and you talk about work from anywhere, so we'd be down in the snow and, we'd go snow skiing all day, and I'd quickly, what are the things I need to deal with, handle a few emails, and just handle those things, and I could literally work from anywhere, which was awesome. So I managed to be able to execute that. Time and time again. So I was lucky in that sense.
Yeah. So in the way you describe it, you're working in terms, for instance, and then you have a break. But when you were having those breaks, they weren't full breaks. They were sort of working and having a break at the same time. Did you ever, through that period, have a complete break? Like say, okay, I'm on holidays for 2 weeks, I'm doing no work at all?
Look, I generally worked everywhere I went because that's how I relaxed. If everything was in control, there was no major fires going, the little things I could ignore. So I was really well trained to go, look, that's a little thing. I can deal with that in 2 weeks, or I don't need to respond right now, or I might just throw a suggestion back and let them deal with it. But I did relax more when I felt things were in control. So I was happy to check a few emails, but mostly everyone knew I was away from work. But I use that as a way of empowering staff anyway. So that was their chance to step up. That was their chance to think of solutions. That was their chance to do whatever it is they wanted to do to grow and prosper in their position within the company. So and I let them do it. So I totally empowered people. But there was the only time I ever really stopped and did nothing was when I went on surfing trips in Indonesia. Because when I went to surfing trips in Indonesia, there was no guarantee any work I did on the computer would come home in case it got stolen or I dropped it in the ocean, and I was out of range anyway. So where we were going surfing we're out on these islands somewhere, and there was no range, there was no reception, so I just turned off. And every year I did 2 weeks of that, and that was off, and it was forced off. So that was really good. There were other places where I did that, like Fraser Island and Cape York, and some of those places you're just out of range. That's it. You just turn off. But I didn't check emails every night. There was nothing for like a week or two.
So interesting, because that was a little while ago. Like technology and access to businesses is completely different. So you were groundbreaking back then. How many years ago was that?
In 1996, I went into a computer shop, and I haven't got it here, sorry. I went into a phone shop, and on the box, on the side of the box, it said, you can send faxes with this phone. And I wanted to, way back in 1996, be able to send faxes on the road. And I walked into the computer shop, and it was data, right? That's all I'm really saying. We know what it is now. And I said, can you show me how I do it? Can you show me how I send a fax from a phone? Because I had the laptop, I've got the phone, show me. And they went, well, we don't know how it actually works, but the box says it can do it. So I've always been wanting to be able to do the ability to be able to travel with the family, travel for myself, and be able to do everything I need to do on the road. I always wanted to be able to do that. So that wasn't an accident. That was actually a deliberate thing. So even if I was away talking to clients, I still wanted to be able to do it. Now we all do it. Unfortunately, it's the other way around, where it's chasing us all the time and we struggle to let go. So it's actually the reverse now, whereas it's constantly on top of us, and we need to learn to go, no, I don't need to deal with anything today. I can deal with it tomorrow. It's not that big a fire. It's okay. I can let it go. So it's actually the opposite. But all the way along, I was always trying to do it. In 2003, I remember we were getting, 9.6 kilobits a second we were getting in data download, and then they brought out a new phone. It went to 14.4, and that was a 15% improvement, right? 50% improvement. And I still couldn't even download the images on my laptop because it was too much data. And nowadays, I know what we're getting, 1,000 kilobits a second or something. So it's insane what it's changed to.
Fantastic. And yeah, it's an interesting point what you say there about controlling your time. Just because we now, especially now more than ever before, we have total access, and people have total access to us. We have total access to a business 24/7. But I think it's important to actually make the decision and control that. Just because you are available, you control when you are actually available to work in your business, and not be there 24/7. That's all part of it. There's two different things. Being able to work remotely and being able to integrate work and life as one, and the difference between that is your choice and taking control of that.
Very fine line, like going out to dinner and being able to not look at your phone and check your email. It's not hard to do, but a lot of people struggle. And I guess, as a surfer, I can go surfing for 4 or 5 hours, and the world's going to do whatever the world does for 4 or 5 hours, and there's nothing I can do about it. When I come in, I deal with it. So I can do it for an hour or two at a restaurant. It's not a problem. And but a lot of my friends, they struggle with it. They're always checking their phones. They always want to be in touch with everything. Like I said, it chases us rather than we don't. For some people, it controls them. They don't control it. And you've got to learn the art of being able to just say, look, it's in control. I'll deal with it later. If it is an emergency, then someone will pick up the phone and ring you and say, look, there's a big problem, right? But that's what happens.
Yeah, it absolutely is all about the mindset. It's all about, what goes on in our mind, because like you said, the place isn't going to burn down and anything drastic happen. It's all about in our minds. So that's important. So looking back on when you were growing your business and how you've gone through that, looking back, is there anything you'd do differently?
Oh, yeah, there's probably lots I'd do differently. I probably should have stuck to some of the accommodation website stuff I was doing, because that was way back in the early days before Airbnb. So maybe I should have stuck to that. But anyway, as far as business, as far as the way I ran the business and what I did, look, there are some things I changed, and I'll keep those to myself. But at the end of the day, some of those things that I did actually set myself up. The way I led the company and the way I treated the staff, I wouldn't change any of that. And it's always good to have hindsight and go, well, I could have done that better, and I could have done that better, and I should have done that differently. But at the end of the day, I still got an A+ report card for the the 100 bad things that went wrong or bad decisions I made 1,000 good ones. And that's all I care about, is the 1,000 good things I did work well. And that's all I care. Like even when I went around Australia for 6 months, so that was it. On the 1st of March, 2008, ready or not, we were going, because there was 1,000 reasons not to go. There was all sorts of reasons. I said, I don't care, we're going. And I just drove as fast as I could to Broken Hill, so I couldn't come back. I was too far to come back. So overnight, we drove all the way out to Broken Hill, and that was it. So unless there was some major catastrophe, we were gone. And so I just had to pull the pin and go. And I'm sure during that 6 months around Australia that I took the family and spent all that time, that the business would have been better if I was there. But, my kids remember all that stuff. Now, they remember everything about that trip. They came back and they could tell people more about Australia than anyone else in their classrooms, right? And they still remember all the things we did. And that's something that I'll treasure forever, and they'll know forever. It's awesome. So there's 1,000 reasons not to go. And, I don't regret the fact I went. I know the business would have grown more, but hey, that's not a problem, right?
Yeah, and the point is, you'll never get that time back with the kids. So, you've spent it with the kids, and, as you said, they'll remember it forever.
Yeah, from the swimming with the whale sharks to doing Ayers Rock to driving the Nulla board to all the things we did in 6 months, flying over the horizontal falls in a plane, to the bungles in a helicopter, to all those things we did. I mean, it was just massive, and they still remember them. And Archie was 4 and Jake was 9. Archie's got a little bit less memory, but the photos come up on our TV screen at home, and they're reminded of them, so they're never going to forget them.
Yeah, and you absolutely only get one opportunity at being in your kid's life. So, yeah, well done. So for other business owners out there, for our people that are tuned in, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And before we get to the end of this, which we're getting close to, please, this is a conversation. Please ask questions. If you have questions, pop them in the comments, put them in now, and we'll fire them at Scotty on the way. So, Scotty, any advice you'd give other business owners out there that are either been in business for a long while, they've got a traditional business, they're starting a business, what advice would you give them as they're building that business and around the balance thing?
Oh, look, if I go back to school teacher hours, that was an easy one. When I talk to people, they go, oh, yeah, well, I can do terms and then take time off. Just do that. And I never felt guilty about doing the time off either. I didn't make any money for the first few years of the company. So when I was having holidays after 2010, when things are really kicking in, I never felt guilty. All those staff weren't there when I had no money, or, I was paying them all more than I was paying myself. So I never felt guilty once about any of the time I did with my family or for myself. So don't feel guilty, because, you know what you did and you know what you sacrificed time in and on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, yearly basis, what you're doing. So don't never feel guilty about any of the rewards you get out of the company or the business. So that's one thing. So balancing it out, never feel guilty. Another thing was that I did, which I think I did really well, because I ended up having a company, so I had staff. And the one thing I tried to do was always make myself redundant. I made myself not the most important person in the office. So every single thing I did was always adding value to the team rather than being the most important person in the team. So I always made sure that as a leader, and I never really looked at it that way at the time, I just did it because it was what I wanted to achieve, which was to make myself not the most important person. So as a leader, that I empowered the others to be as good as they could be. And if I could make all my team be really good, that allowed me to do all the things I wanted to do, like, travel, or not even be stressed on a day-to-day basis. Or if something went wrong, I knew I had team to come and call on to get things done. Or if we picked up a new project, I had people ready for whatever it was. And the other benefit about traveling, so when I went away, for example, I went to America for 9.5 weeks. And when I did that in 2012, it was, you've got to give people a chance for them to step up into those roles. And if I'm there all the time, how do I know they can or can't? So by stepping out and letting go and letting them have a crack at it, I came back to stronger staff. Now, there was things that went wrong, but that's okay. They dealt with them. And I never, ever questioned it. As long as they did some decisions and we looked at it and went, cool, as long as you're making decisions for the right reasons, I'm going to support every decision you make. So it was a chance of letting people go and letting them step up to the plate and have a crack themselves.
And I'd have to hazard a guess that you had happier staff, and staff retention was pretty good as a result of doing that?
Well, I had a no-fire policy, interestingly enough, so I never fired anyone. So they had to leave. And, there were some times where, there was some people in the office that didn't get along. And it didn't, look, staff, right? Anyone's got a company knows what I'm talking about. And there was times where I really hoped the people that were having a bit of a conflict would come out stronger at the other end. I had two really good people. But inevitably only one wins, one leaves. But anyway, I was always hoping some of that would work out. And that was one thing, if I wish, I had more people understand what I was doing by letting them work it out. And some people just thought I didn't care by letting them work it out. But what I was really doing was going, oh, look, at the end here, if these guys get together and they become a really good partnership out of this conflict, it's going to be awesome. So anyway, that's one thing I wish I had done better, but it's just only because it didn't work. If it had worked, I'd be telling you. What I did was I let them resolve it themselves. I ended up with really good employees, and it was really strong. But that didn't work as good as it could have sometimes. So, but I had a no-fire policy, so I just let them sort it out sometimes. I'd get involved a little bit and hope that came out at the other end with really strong employees. And I did have strong employees, and the retention was, yes, you're correct, really good. Because it was my responsibility to teach and train and nurture, motivate, inspire, all those right things. So I had a no-fire policy. I never fired anyone.
Okay, fantastic. So, audience, it's over to you to ask some questions, please. If you've got any questions for Scotty, just pop them in the comments and we'll ask Scotty. We have a question here. Must be a friend of yours. Do you see that one, Scotty? Scott Parker. have you got a spare
Hey,
room?
there you go, mate. What are you doing there? I know, Scotty.
So Scotty the Scotty, he wants to know if you've got a spare room. That's Scotty, that's got nothing to do with the conversation, but I'm sure, I don't know whether Scotty's glad you asked.
Yeah, we've still got a spare room for you, mate. No worries. I hope you've still got a spare room after the fires up your way last week. So good to hear you, Scotty. How's the if you can answer questions, how's the air conditioning business going?
There you go, Scott. It's over to you, Scott Parker. It's hard having two Scots on the conversation, and there's a bit of lag with the Facebook comments too. So he might answer, and it'll come up. Oh no, here we go. In between his answer, we've got Justine has a question for you. Here you go, Justine. Hey, Justine, how you going up at Mollymook? What's the best question you have ever been asked that helped you move through a tough time or difficult decision? There you go.
Well, if I be really candid about the toughest time I ever had was when I had a business partnership that I started off with an IT business. So I had the software hosting or the software business, and it needed to be online with the hosting business. And I went into partnership with a guy, and that went really ugly. So that was probably the worst and toughest time I ever went through. And I had one guy say to me once during that court case, because no one knew the truth, right? In the end, it all fell away. The other guy stopped doing his thing, and it all just fell away. It was just a stupid situation, really. But one guy said to me, you just got to do the right thing. And I thought, well, hang on a second. I think I am. But what it made me realize is just how many people outside had no idea what I was doing and what was really involved with the company that I had. So it wasn't really a question, but that was the toughest and most difficult time I ever had. That was back in 2006. And it just made me realize how alone I was and how much I didn't have support of, I guess, people that I knew from the surfing community or friends, because I just didn't understand the company I had, the business model, the pressure I was under and all those sorts of things. So that question, I'm probably not answering what you want to hear, Justine, but the toughest and most difficult time I ever had, I never got anyone give it to me. I ended up having to just work it out on my own, unfortunately, that side of it. And one of the things with that was, one of the benefits of owning your own company is you can't quit. You can't just chuck in the towel. Well, you can, I guess. But I couldn't chuck in the towel. I had to just keep turning up every single day and trying to sort things out. But at the end of that whole thing, I managed to change the company structure and the way I reimburse staff, the way I put bonuses in place for them. And it totally changed my mindset that tough time and that difficult time. So I probably haven't answered your question, but that really was the toughest time I had. And did I get the support around me? Yeah, I did actually. My team, through all of that, I actually grew the team during that whole process. I was a real growth phase of ReNet at that time, so it couldn't have happened at a worse time. But like I said, I took advantage of that negative situation and turned it into a positive situation by rallying the team and then rewarding them. I introduced bonuses at the same time to all my team. I said, well, look, I'm going to re-engineer this, the way you get paid. And everyone in the office from that day onwards, I can't remember the exact date, but I started paying bonuses and rewards to all my staff members from then on in to help engage them more in the business, because I had to rethink about the way things were working. And I certainly am grateful for that time, because I learned a lot about the legal system, and it made me rethink the staff and the company and how I was going to move forward from 2006 onwards. And I think that was one of the pivotal points of the company when I look back. I mean, it was the worst year, but also the best year.
Fantastic. Hope that answered your questions there, Justine. And thank you so much for those questions. We've got a follow-up from Scott. Just all good, brother. Give you a call. And Jessica, what's your daily routine?
You probably mean more then than now, but if you want to know now, I'm going to make you really jealous. So I get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee. I wait for my son to go to school, who's in year 10, and then I'll go surfing till lunchtime. I'll then cruise on into the office, check a few emails, do a bit of banking and stuff, and all of a sudden it's 4 o'clock and that's my day. So that's pretty boring at the moment. Back then, though, my routine was a little bit more intense. I'd quickly go for a surf in the morning, like 7:30 to 8:30. Then I'd go into the office, and then I used to be almost the first in and pretty well the last out every day. So I'd get home at 7:30, 8 o'clock every day, which was long hours. Don't get me wrong. Go home, have dinner and everything else. Then I'd often sleep for a few hours, and it was nothing unusual. Wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, smash out another 3 or 4 hours, have a bit more of a sleep, and then get going again. And that wasn't every day, but that was a bit of a typical routine for me. And I enjoyed it. It wasn't a problem. It wasn't me going, oh, I've got to do it. It was actually me enjoying doing it. So it wasn't an issue. Like I said, I had really strong goals in place. I knew what I wanted. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. It certainly was not a challenge for me. But one of my daily routines that I have, Jessica, was I always made sure I went surfing in the morning. So I needed to make sure I felt fit and healthy first. Because if you don't look after yourself first, it's the one thing I learned in the 90s I didn't look after at all. You know, when I put on weight and I wasn't happy and I went through a midlife crisis, it was because I ended up last all the time. You know, so on my career, on a plaque I had made up in 1999, the top thing is to be number one. And what I mean by that is to make sure I look after myself, because without me, there is no company. Without me, there's no family. And I had to make sure I looked after me as number one in moving forward, because, well, that was the whole reason why I was going to work, wasn't it? It was the whole reason why I did anything, was to set up something for myself, my family, and so look after myself. So my health was pretty important. Every morning I made sure I went surfing and looked after that. And when the surf was no good, I actually jumped on a bike and I'd go riding for 10 or 20 kilometres or 30 kilometres on a bike. So that, not so much a routine, but certainly looking after myself was part of the routine that I did every day. I had no problems with working hard and long hours, but make sure you do stuff for yourself as well.
So you can more or less say nothing's changed. You start the day with the surf, and even back then, when you were working really hard, it was important to, and I do the same thing, whether it's a surf or a walk on the beach or whatever it is to start the day with something for you. And mind you, I prefer your day now where you spend a few hours surfing and then come back and have a cup of coffee and do whatever. That sounds a lot better than just working for 18 hours a day.
As an extension of that routine, I also made sure there was no appointments before 11 o'clock in the morning. Now, it didn't mean I didn't get to the office at 9 or anything like that, or, you know, sometimes I was there earlier. It didn't really matter. But I also made sure there's no appointments before 11, because with surfing, sometimes the sand, the wind and the swell's good and everything's good. So I made sure if it was one of those days, I could stay surfing a little bit longer. So, you know, the office didn't call me in, oh, I've got to go in now. But then again, there was times I was in Auckland or I was in Sydney or I was in Brisbane or Perth. I mean, there was times where I was away for 2 weeks just for work at conferences or annual awards. So, you know, there was times when I was away, and obviously the priority then is just around work for, you know, 7 days straight type thing. But when I came back, it was back into, I'll call it routine, but most people wouldn't call it a routine. It was more of a lifestyle that balanced work and you know, my health at the same time. So I made sure I didn't have any appointments before 11, and the office knew it. There was always, if someone says Scott available, he's available after 11.
Awesome. Very, very important. Okay, we're just about there, Scotty. But before we wrap up, I did want to share a little something with our audience about some news. For people that don't know, I run a program called the Work From Anywhere program, which is a 6-month program that helps people transition their businesses so they can integrate work and life as one, just like Scotty and the other guests do. And that program finishes with a 7-day retreat, a Carpe Diem retreat in the French Alps, where all you people that are on the program get to actually live the life. And this year, or next year, 2020, Scotty will be at the retreat. He'll be coming along to the French Alps and be dropping in throughout the program on our mastermind sessions as well. So that's the announcement for today. You looking forward to France, Scotty?
I've never been there. As much as I balance things out, I've never been to Europe. I've been to Indonesia surfing, the States, but I've never been to Europe, so I'm so excited about coming over there and being a part of the program.
Yeah. And what will you share with the people that will be there at the retreat?
Well, look, people can ask me anything, and I can certainly talk about all the things I did. And one-on-one, I tend to open up a little bit more as well. So in a more intimate environment, I tend to open up a lot more. So I'm certainly happy to open up, be a lot more emotional, a lot more, connected with people in a one-to-one environment. That's for sure, rather than what goes out on the World Wide Web. But yeah, certainly, there's lots of things I did well, and there was lots of things that didn't work. I tend not to talk about the things that didn't work a lot. I tend to try to focus on the ones that did, around staff development, goal setting, the way sales presentations and the way you achieve those goals, some of those actions and activities. So I tend to talk about a lot of those things a lot when I get into group environments, and people seem to resonate with them. They like the stories, and they like some of the stuff. Sometimes it just confirms they're on the right track. And sometimes it's really fresh and new or a different approach. So, and I'm more than happy to share it with everyone.
Yeah, no, and it's an awesome place to share it all. Amazing scenery and mountains, and we do some hiking and a bit of e-biking. And we do have this year at the retreat, there was some amazing, what you talk about, opening up and conversations around life and integrating work and life as one. So yeah, excited to have you there. And looking forward to it's happening in August next year. So that's about it. Thank you so much, Scotty, for sharing your story and your insights. And thank you to everybody out there that has joined us tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the show. I certainly have. And keep Carpe Diem and seize the day every single day. Join us next week. If you've got any questions, continue to add them in the comments and we'll get to them. If you need some help integrating your life, get in touch. If you want to join us next year in France, by all means, get in touch. Carpe Diem, seize the day every single day. See you, Scotty.
See ya.